In the waning months of 1177, the sands of the Levant trembled under the march of a mighty host. The Ayyubid Sultan, Salahuddin, had set his sights on Jerusalem itself, leading an army from Egypt with the intent of striking deep into Crusader lands. His forces, numbering perhaps 15,000, moved with confidence. After all, the holy city stood nearly defenseless. Earlier that year, the bulk of the Christian armies had departed for a northern campaign, leaving Jerusalem vulnerable. Seizing this opportunity, Salahuddin crossed into Palestine, sweeping past the fortress of Ascalon. King Baldwin IV, the young ruler of Jerusalem, had mustered what forces he could, but the Sultan had little reason to fear him. Leaving a detachment to besiege Baldwin at Ascalon, Salahuddin pressed onward, assured that no resistance remained to challenge his advance. But the young king, despite his affliction with leprosy, was not so easily outmaneuvered. Against all odds, Baldwin IV broke free from Ascalon, gathering knights and foot soldiers from across his realm. His force was small, only 4,500 men, a mere fraction of Salahuddin's army. But it was determined. With banners raised high and the relic of the true cross carried at their forefront, they rode in pursuit. By sheer will and urgency, they reached Salahuddin's host before it could reach Jerusalem, catching the Sultan unprepared. The battlefield was set near Montgisard, a small rise along Salahuddin's march route. The Ayyubid forces were strung out, many men dispersed in foraging and raiding parties, their discipline loosened by the assumption of an easy conquest. When Baldwin's host crested the horizon, the Sultan was taken aback. His scouts had reported no significant threat, yet here, against all expectation, stood the army of Jerusalem, small but defiant. The moment of easy conquest had slipped through his fingers, and now battle was upon him. His men scrambled into formation, with his nephew Taqi ad-Din rallying the Egyptian troops, while Salahuddin himself hurried to assemble his elite Mamluks. Baldwin, only 16 years old and weakened by disease, did not command alone. At his side was Reynaud de Chatillon, the ruthless and battle-hardened Lord of Kerak, who took charge of the battle strategy. Alongside them stood the noble Balian of Ibelin, his brother Baldwin of Ramla, and the warriors of the Templar Order, their 80 knights led by Grandmaster Eudes of Saint-Amand. As the sun cast its golden light over the battlefield, King Baldwin IV dismounted his horse despite the agony of his leprosy. In the presence of the true cross, its gilded frame glistening under the sky, the young king fell to his knees and prayed for victory. His men, weary and outnumbered, watched in solemn silence. For them, this was not just another battle, it was a fight for survival. With his spirit unshaken, Baldwin rose. The call to arms was given. The King of Jerusalem led the charge himself. The Crusader cavalry surged forward, their lances lowered as they thundered across the field. The Ayyubid forces, still scrambling into position, were struck with devastating force. The first impact shattered their cohesion, cutting deep into their hastily formed lines. Among the chaos, Baldwin was in the thick of the fighting. His royal standard fluttered amid the carnage, his retinue battling fiercely at his side. Meanwhile, Salahuddin, realizing the gravity of the situation, sent messengers racing across the battlefield, desperately calling back his foraging and raiding parties. But the Crusader rearguard intercepted these scattered groups, picking them off before they could reinforce the Ayyubid lines. As the battle raged on, the momentum remained with the Christians. Frustrated but not yet defeated, the Sultan gathered the remnants of his raiding troops, forming them into a final reserve on his flank. If they could rally, the battle could still be salvaged, but the Crusaders would not let him. From the other side of the battlefield, Grand Master Eudes de Saint-Amand of the Templars spotted the vulnerable mass of troops forming where Salahuddin was heading. Without hesitation, he led the Knights Templar into a thundering charge. The Mamluk Guard attempted to resist, but the Templars smashed through their lines, cutting them down with brutal efficiency. The Sultan's forces crumbled into chaos. The disciplined ranks of the Ayyubid army disintegrated into a desperate fight for survival. The battle had turned into a slaughter. The once proud host of Salahuddin was being cut down without mercy. Soldiers abandoned their weapons, fleeing in every direction. For the first time, the great Salahuddin faced utter disaster. His army had been shattered, his men lay dead in the thousands, and his vision of conquest had turned to ruin. Stripping off his armor, he mounted a camel and fled, leaving behind the wreckage of his once mighty host. Behind him, the battlefield of Montgisard was left littered with the bodies of his fallen warriors. The young King Baldwin IV had won a victory against all odds. News of the victory spread swiftly, rekindling hope across the Crusader states. The Sultan, humiliated and forced into retreat, would not forget this day. The road to Jerusalem, which had once seemed open, was now closed by the sword of a leper king. But victory was fleeting. Though Baldwin had delivered a devastating blow, Salahuddin was far from defeated. The Sultan's ambitions remained unchanged, and in time he would return, stronger, more prepared, and determined for revenge.